what I want to talk about now is creative ways to use the Zoom platform or online platforms beyond the microphone on and off, video on and off, and even like specific ways you can use that to create more purposeful engagement on Zoom. Actually, we're going to start here with a list that I made in one of my sessions with folks. And let's see how it comes up. Okay, that looks pretty great. So one of the things to remember about online meetings is that there are many, many ways to get people to participate. Most of the time, when people think about participating in online meetings, they think about getting people to say things out loud in front of the large group. For a lot of us, that is what we think of with participation, and that might be the only thing that we think counts as participation. And I think one of the first things we should do when we think about this question, how do I keep people engaged online, is to think about what are all of the different forms of engagement or participation. So I asked people that question in a meeting that I led, and here is what we came up with. So here are all of the ways to participate. Facial expressions, type into the chat, ask a question, observing, just like watching and listening, being like an active observer is a way to participate. Emojis, having your camera on, annotating screen shares, amplifying what other people are saying, maybe like repeating what they're saying in the chat, or even saying, I saw something that was in the chat that I want to amplify into the room. Doing polls, that could be live polls, could be built into the software, having small group people who are in charge of their breakout rooms, gestures, physical objects brought on screen, like tell us something that's like weird or meaningful that's on your desk, and maybe holding up an object in physical space, and then being part of the like notes and support team. So just the idea and remembering that there are just so many ways to get people to participate, not just out loud in front of the full group, I think can be a really helpful first step to thinking about how can we build participation. Let's talk about some other things we can do. Okay, so I'm in a Zoom, and this chat box, I think, can be an incredibly powerful tool for getting people to participate. We often encourage people to use the chat, but there are a few specific ways that I encourage people to use the chat in my sessions that I think really encourage and invite participation. So one of those things is something that I call Chatterfalls, or a chat storm. So this is when I will have everybody open up the chat, and I will say, okay, what I want you to do is I want you to type in a response to the question that I'm about to ask, and I don't want you to hit send. I'm going to ask you to hit send once we've all had a chance to type that in. So what that does, giving people a chance to like type it in ahead of time, does a few things, right? One thing it does is that it allows people to think without seeing everybody's responses. That means that we can think for ourselves more independently. It also means that we don't feel like our response is bad relative to everybody else's. Like, oh, they had a better idea, or more creative, or more thoughtful, or shorter, whatever it is, right? We're judgmental creatures. So helping people just type and then hit send all at once lowers that self-judgment voice. It also makes it like more likely that everybody is going to respond, right? Because sometimes when you're asking people to do it as they go, it's really easy to just say, there's been enough responses, versus I want everybody to do this and we're all going to hit send together. So Chatterfalls or chat storms are really great ways to invite more participation in the chat specifically. You can also, and this feels like maybe a little silly to mention, but it's also like just something I don't see everybody do, which is if somebody shares something in the chat, say it and repeat it out loud into the room, right? Allowing that to be a way that people participate, you can still get their voice out loud, but they don't have to be the one that's saying it. So that kind of like echo effect, I think, is a really powerful way to increase participation. And another way that I use Chatterfalls, you can also do this with like really simple structures, like fill in the gap, which is a structure from Facilitator Cards that I really love. So fill in the gap creates like a really easy way for people to participate. So an example would be every good meeting always has blank, right? And then you could say, okay, everybody type in their response, 3, 2, 1, hit send, and then you'll have this big list of all of the things. And what's awesome is you can then invite more participation from that. You could say, all right, Sandra said donuts. Sandra, can you tell us why you think every good meeting has to have donuts? And what's awesome is like maybe that person didn't want to participate out loud already, but they said something that you think is interesting and now you're inviting them to participate in a new way. So using chat as kind of like a low barrier initial way for people to participate and then asking them to participate out loud afterward can be a really great way to build more participation. Let's talk about another basic function of most video platforms, which is just having your camera on and off. So I mentioned I was going to give you a sneaky, maybe cool way, I think, to invite people to turn their cameras on. So I will do an activity that's as old as time on Zoom, which is called Peekaboo. And this is how it works. I will invite everyone to make sure that they are in gallery mode. This won't look cool right now because you're only seeing me, but you're gonna have to imagine it with like 20 people's video squares. And I'll say, if you don't want to participate, that's totally fine. But to participate in this activity, you do need to have your video on because this is how it works. I'm going to say a statement and I'm going to ask everybody to take their thumb and put it directly over their webcam, right? And so all of a sudden everybody's faces disappear and you just have this big screen of thumbs. And then I'll say a statement like, take your thumb off the webcam if you enjoy pineapple on pizza. And then if that applies to you, you take your thumb off the webcam and you kind of peek out, right? You do a little bit of peekaboo and then you say, okay, great. And we're going to reset and we'll do another question. So doing that as like a warm up helps people get their video on, reminds them that they're like physical bodies in space and that their webcam is also like a physical object that they can like touch. And creates like a good reason to have your video on, right? Most of the time, our reason isn't a good one. And this one actually, like, you can't participate without it, right? That's a really interesting, like, way, I would say, to use the webcam. I used it as an icebreaker in my example, but you could also use it for, okay, I would love to know if people feel ready to move to a vote. So put your thumb over the webcam, take your thumb off the webcam if you don't feel ready to vote. And you could see, oh, okay, there's 4 of us who aren't feeling ready to vote. And then you could invite those people into a fishbowl discussion or into the hot seat in order to ask them for their voices more and kind of like make sure that they're the only ones that are talking because they're the only ones who have some resistance at that point, right? So I just named 2 other activity structures. Let's see here, fishbowl and hot seat. For anybody who's watching, these cards, facilitator cards, are part of a box called Facilitator Cards. And basically they're different structures and ideas and frameworks for participation of different types, right? So these yellow ones are often for participation in discussions or to get people's questions on the table. One we talked about earlier, this blue one, fill in the gap, is often for getting people's kind of like emotions or initial ideas on the table. So there are 2 structures that you can use, just the kind of video functions of the platform to invite participation. So one is Fishbowl. Fishbowl is a way to shrink the conversation down to just a few participants. So there are 2 ways to do this, using the spotlight feature, or if let's say you have 5 people and those are the people who are going to have a small group discussion in front of a large group, you could say, okay, I want everybody else to turn your videos off. Just those 5 people keep your videos on, and then you can instruct people to hide non-video participants. The way you do that is you find the 3 dots in the upper right corner of anybody's video who is off, and when you click that, there will be an option that says hide non-video participants, and that will shrink the room down to just the people in the fishbowl. And fishbowl is a really great way to like change up participation because not everyone has to participate in every conversation. Not everyone wants to participate in every conversation. So rather than making everybody go into breakout rooms, which is another great strategy for participation, sometimes we can say, you know what, just 5 people are going to have this conversation and the rest of us, our only requirement in this moment is just to listen, to pay attention and to like reflect on what's being said. So changing up how participation is done and using that technology, right, to like shrink the room with spotlighting it or hiding non-video participants is like a really cool way to create a new invitation and kind of style of participation. Hotseats, very similar in the sense that you're kind of just putting one person rather than a group into the fishbowl. You're saying, okay, John, you have some questions, or actually we have questions for John on, this initiative that's coming up. So we're going to spotlight John, and John's going to be the one that's going to be answering questions for the next few minutes. It feels totally different to give someone permission to take over a meeting versus when someone kind of grabs the mic and takes it for themselves. So those structures can be really, really helpful for ways to mix up participation and to keep people engaged. Because my biggest tip for keeping people engaged online is to invite different ways for them to participate throughout a meeting. So more than 5 to 10 minutes without a concrete way and kind of change for them to participate is going to be a high ask for their attention to be focused. When you are in an online meeting, you are in a distraction box. Like, the computer is the world's most distracting technology. And for you to keep people's attention means inviting them to engage. And what I do is I invite them to engage in a lot of different ways throughout a session to ensure that, like, if they did get distracted, they constantly are brought back, right? So we can do that with some of the activities that we've already talked about. And there is a ton more ways as well. So let's get into just a few more. Okay, we're gonna kind of go from one extreme to the other. So one extreme is like, how can you increase the amount of ways people can participate with each other simultaneously? And then what are ways that we can actually get people to participate and like keep engaged, but be solo? So let's start in a moment with the getting people to engage and participate all together. And then we'll move to how do we actually keep them engaged even when they're doing solo work. We talked about one of my favorite ways for large group participation already. That was in the chat. Another is, and I would say this is kind of like a creative use of the technology, is to do whiteboard responses or annotation. So whiteboard responses, the way you do that is by pulling up your screen share. There's actually a couple of different options here for screen shares. And if you've never poked around on this, I would highly encourage you to do that and to look into the advanced portion of a screen. So helpful when you don't want to share your bookmarks or the fact that you have 500 tabs open. But we're just going to use this basic feature called whiteboard here. So the whiteboard feature on Zoom is available for everyone, and people can also use it in the breakout rooms, which is maybe a 201 level thing, but you can open up this and use this with your participants. So one of the ways that I've done that is I will draw a spectrum. You can also prepare this ahead of time if you want to, but if you have an impromptu idea, it's really quick to do that. We'll just do it on one line. Okay, so we're going to do a spectrum of strongly disagree. Bet you can guess what this one is. Strongly agree. And we've got a spectrum here now of strongly agree to strongly disagree. And what you can do is ask your participants to open up their annotation tool. So the way they do this is when you're screen sharing at the top, it will say, your name is sharing their screen, and then it will say view options. This is for your participants. When you click view options, there will be an annotation option as long as you have enabled that on your side. So just make sure this right here is enable annotation for others. Just make sure that that is selected. So once that's selected, what they will see is this toolbar right up here. And I'll invite people to say, okay, go ahead and grab the stamp tool and place a stamp anywhere on the board, right? Just to make sure that people can use it. And some people will go crazy and throw a bunch of stamps up there, and you can clear all of those later. So, oh no, I cleared perfect. I don't want to clear everything. I just wanted to clear the stamps. Let's see if we can erase them. Perfect. Okay, so what's cool is you can then have people respond by placing a stamp. So I will say, okay, I think virtual meetings are just as good as online meetings. Strongly agree, strongly disagree. And everybody's going to stamp somewhere on that spectrum. And what that allows you to do is kind of get everybody participating, right? Again, if their attention has floated away to Twitter or their phone or whatever it is, all of a sudden you're asking them to engage. And so they're going to be oh, okay, stamp tool, cool, all right, I'm pressing a thing, right? And they're back and paying attention again. And then you can expand that participation to say, oh, okay, Meg, I saw you put your stamp in the kind of strongly agree side. What made you put your stamp there, right? And use this kind of like low barrier participation to expand to a more like a bigger conversation. You could also bring this into breakout rooms, right? So another thing you could do is create a strongly agree, middle ground, strongly disagree option breakout room and allow people to select into the one that they place themselves into and have small group conversations on those different places. There's so many options here for whiteboard and the uses, but I think this little hacky spectrum questions is one of my favorite ways to do it. And to get everybody's responses in, again, this like really low barrier, but still like active, engaging way. On the kind of other side of the spectrum when it comes to Zoom is having people do individual work, but having them stay in the Zoom to do it. And I don't mean in like a study hallway. I mean, if you're in the middle of a meeting and you were like, okay, I want to know like what everyone's favorite, 3 moments were from the last year so that we can really try to like expand on those and bring that into our work that we're doing this year. I want everybody to spend 5 to 10 minutes like looking through all of the videos and photos we took and documents we created and to pull out your best ideas. You could ask everybody to do that in the large room. My favorite way to do that is to actually do it in separate breakout rooms. So when you create breakout rooms, which I can't at the moment, oh no, they're there. You can create breakout rooms for like one for every person. So if you create if you have 20 people and you create 20 breakout rooms and you assign them automatically, they'll each get their own space. And what I find is when people are in their own space, they have a different like level of freedom and they don't feel as observed, which allows their kind of cognitive load to go down. But they're still in the Zoom meeting, right? Like, that they haven't that you're not asking them to close the Zoom and come back, which would have a very different experience. So that kind of idea of like using individual breakout rooms, I think can be an incredibly powerful tool for asking people to participate, but still giving people like solo reflection time, which can be really great for people who are not out loud processors, for people who need a break from the constant input of others in order to think. That's like a completely different way to do it, but one that I think is a creative use of these kind of online platforms. It's a creative use of these online platforms, but still allows people to engage. We've got a couple others that are just kind of like honorable mentions. One is gestures. So there's just this idea of like helping people know that these reaction buttons exist and they can press thumbs up, they can press heart. I think those can be really, really helpful. Having people raise their digital hand can be awesome, especially if you have a large group and you're asking like, does anybody have any questions? Throw it in the chat or you can raise your hand. That's a really helpful one. And the last one I'll do for this moment is to just show you a new technology that is, I don't know if any of the other platforms are doing this yet, but Zoom just added this thing called avatars. And I was telling a friend about it because they have to have their video on to make sure that they're present, just that they're physically present in their space. But they really don't like to do that. And I mentioned there are avatars in Zoom. So if you go into Zoom, you choose video settings and then backgrounds and effects. There's this new thing called avatars and you can become a cow. My favorite is to also combine it with like, a cow appropriate background. And then you kind of feel like you're puppeting something, and it is such a different experience. I use this in my business when I have to do boring administrative tasks because the cow makes it more fun. So there are things that people just don't know exist on Zoom, and I'm not encouraging you maybe to like have everyone turn into a cow or whatever animal they prefer. I definitely I'm really a blonde cow with a hoodie. That's really my type. But this is like a creative use of the platform. And if people are feeling Zoom exhausted or you know, they need to be there and show you that they're physically present, because if you fall out of frame, the cow will disappear or freeze, apparently. Oh, there it goes. So right now I'm leaning out of the camera and you can't see me. And then when I come back, the cow will come back. So, yeah, that's an cow in space. That's an option that I just thought I would mention because it's fun. It's a creative way to use the platform and to get people to maybe somebody feels more participatory if they're not speaking from themselves, right? Maybe you could even do fun questions if everybody has their Zoom updated. Like, okay, I would love if you want to take if you want to be somebody who's going to try to like poke holes in our solutions, I want you to be a fox. And if you're going to be somebody who's going to like really have like pure optimism, I want you to choose a cow, and like kind of do 6 thinking hats, but with different animal avatars. You know, sometimes we just need a little novelty, everybody, a little bit of joy in our virtual meetings. So if you tuned in, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned a lot. Please let me know in the comments your thoughts, perspectives, ideas, disagreements. I would love to hear all of it below. If you got something out of this video, give us a like, subscribe, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.